button first. There we go. Greetings to everyone who's able to join us for today's virtual Q&A. My name is Eric Vandenhoevel, and I am the Vice President of Talent and Education with the Greater Green Bay Chamber. And I'm pleased to be joined today by the Secretary of the Department of Workforce Development, Mr. Caleb Frostman. Secretary Frostman, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Eric, for having me. Glad to be here.
So the first question I have before we jump into the workforce development questions is, just really wanted to recognize how hard leadership is and under normal circumstances, but certainly in a global pandemic that's been amplified. So how are you and your team handling things? How are you adjusting, staying balanced? How's everyone doing?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it's been a really challenging couple of months, and I think, with the pressures that are out there, you have to definitely, test your mettle, if you will, or really try to find and refine and in some cases, change your leadership style as it is necessary. And it's been challenging. I think for us, we've tried to, stick to the idea and our guiding values that, our employees perform best when they are supported and they have what they need in terms of resources and support to be successful. So, even as we have the challenges that we have, and there's obviously appetite for things to move faster, be more efficient, and we have that as well. We've really tried to err on the side of making sure that the leaders are doing all we can to make our employees as effective and efficient as possible. And a big part of that is supporting them and sticking by them and being conscious of the challenges that they're facing. But I really do think we've gotten the most out of our team in large part by trying to let them know that they're supported and that we are here to provide what they need to be successful. So it has been challenging, no questions, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of staring at the ceiling, soul searching, just trying to make sure we're doing all we can on behalf of claimants and that, our employees have what they need to be successful. So definitely many opportunities to grow, to be outside of one's comfort zone, and have really, even though it's been a virtual work environment, feel a lot closer to our leaders and our staff as a result of what we've been through these last 5 months.
Absolutely. Before we jump into the other questions, just want to remind people who are watching, you can submit questions in the question and answer box below. Certainly have quite a few questions to get through, but if there's something that's relevant or a follow-up to the questions that I ask, want to make sure that we're responsive to our audience. So kind of following up on my last question, Caleb, everyone has been forced to adjust during the last 5 months of this pandemic. So how have you and the Department of Workforce Development's business services team, how are you continuing to connect employers and workers while the job centers are closed?
Sure. I think we've been very pleased for the most part. Maybe pleasantly surprised is probably an exaggeration, but we've been pleased with how well virtual services have gone. We've been very grateful to our job center and our workforce board partners for being creative in how we deliver services. I think the last couple of weeks we've seen some drive-through job fairs happen. We have offered some in-person by appointment only opportunities for folks, but I think that the virtual service delivery is going fairly well. But it's also highlighted some, I think, existing flaws in our system or weaknesses as it relates to either computer literacy or in a lot of cases broadband connectivities. We're trying to connect job seekers with open positions or have folks file unemployment claims. That broadband connectivity issue really continues to pervade a lot of Wisconsin, and not just rural Wisconsin, but I would even say outer ring suburbs. We've had some issues there, but we're continuing to work through portals like Job Center of Wisconsin, where we've got, I think at this point, 70,000-ish job postings and about 135,000 resumes on file. Unemployment insurance claimants are required to put a resume on jobcenterofwisconsin.com. So we're hoping to connect those two employer-seeking employees and job seekers out there with those opportunities. And so I think that virtual service delivery has been a great lesson. I think, like I said, we're pleased with how that has gone. There is still obviously room for improvement. We continue to refine those strategies constantly, but I think we've been really, like I said, grateful to our workforce development board partners, our job center, job service partners that have helped really drive some of the creativity as to how we deliver services throughout the state. But at this point, that's kind of what we've been looking at, what we've been delivering, and we hope to continue to expand virtual services and also where it makes sense, deliver in person, including potentially, I know last year we launched our first mobile career lab, and with COVID, it's been a bit of a challenge, but that particular asset has screens on the outside to hold distanced events, and so there's a chance that we might redeploy that more often than we've used it thus far.
Sure. I would imagine, like we have been hearing from a lot of businesses, there are some innovations and opportunities to be creative that will probably help you be better in the future when we get back to normal. I mean, new practices and procedures, is that the case?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think connecting, whether it's virtually or in person, we certainly have a lot to learn from this. And like I said, we've picked up some best practices, but have had certainly opportunities where we can learn more and learn from folks that are out there.
Sure. So you touched on this a little bit, so if you have anything else to add, great, and if not, we can move on. But in preparing for this session and getting feedback from others, the general topic of unemployment it was certainly the most common theme. So do you have any general information or general reaction to what unemployment looks like in the state of Wisconsin right now?
Yeah, no, this has been obviously the biggest area of concern, of discussion, of investment for us as far as people and time and resources. And I always like to kind of set the stage with some context that I think even from a national side, it makes sense. I think it was 2 weeks ago, ABC News put out a story just how this recession is unlike any we've ever seen before. And the stat that they initially drew to was that previously to COVID-19, the highest week of initial claims in the history of the U.S. was during the '82 recession, and it was 692,000 initial claims in a week. For 20 weeks straight, the U.S. had more than 1 million weeks of initial claims. That streak was just broken last week, but that first week or second week of COVID, that previous record was smashed tenfold. We had about 7 million claims in a week, and maintained that million plus for 20 weeks in a row. And in Wisconsin, thus far, we've had about 870,000 applications come through for UI. That's about, in 5 months, that's about 3 times what we had in all of last year. So pretty incredible volume. And then on the weekly claim side, which are the recurring claims that get folks paid their benefits, we've had 5.7 million weeks claimed since March 15th, which compares to 1.6 million in all of last year. So more than triple. So it's been a big lift, and we've had a lot, to work on, and we've resolved about 5 million, resolved meaning paid or denied 5 million of those 5.7 million weeks. The remaining folks in that queue are working from oldest claims to the newest claims, and so the lion's share of what's left are the more recent claims. But I continue to work through that caseload. We've had to onboard a number of federal programs that have been really beneficial to help unemployed folks eligible for regular state UI, and then other Wisconsinites that wouldn't be eligible for the state programs like PUA, which is that Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. A lot of acronyms being thrown around since COVID-19 came forward. But we've paid out about $3.5 billion to about 495,000 Wisconsinites since March 15th. And it's been, obviously a pretty challenging 5 months, but we continue to make progress week over week. Our adjudicators and our staff working on regular UI and the federal programs, we continue to see steady progress week over week. However, we still see, even though it's dropping, which we're grateful for, pretty high sustained level of weekly claims going forward here. So we're hopeful that claims will continue to abate, and that we'll continue to make progress on those oldest claims moving forward. But it has been a really challenging number of months, but we're grateful to have made some progress and hopeful to make continued progress here in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the work that's piling up is unimaginable. You talked a little bit about the national side, and certainly that gets a lot of press about what's happening in Washington, D.C. We know that there was the extra $600 per week that expired. President Trump with the executive order, potentially taking that to 400. Are you hearing anything from the national level, from the federal government, or are you sort of waiting in the wings like the rest of us?
So we continue to work pretty closely with both FEMA and the Department of Labor to answer some questions. Obviously, this came out really quickly, and so there were a lot of questions that were not resolved upon the delivery of the executive orders, but we are in pretty much daily contact with our National Workforce Development Association partners and DOL and FEMA. So we continue to explore that. There are a lot of, I think 7 states thus far have moved forward with the executive order program. Most states are either exploring or undecided. We continue to dig in and do research at our end to see what would be possible under these executive orders and how that would work. And so we're hopeful to have greater clarity here in the next couple of days or a week or so. The deadline for applying for that is September 10th, and obviously it's a limited pot of money, so we're hopeful to make a decision here in the next couple of days or week.
Okay, so you'd categorize Wisconsin still as the wait and see and doing our homework on what we want to do?
Yeah, we're still digging in.
Okay, great. Anything else? I don't want to spend too much time on the federal government, but anything that you're hearing about funds available to help businesses rather than the unemployment side?
Yeah, so I mean, whether it's businesses or kind of using workforce agencies as a conduit, we continue to apply for grants. I know we've put in for a relatively large employment and training grant through the Department of Labor. We did receive a $9 million grant to expand youth or apprenticeship throughout the states. We're hopeful we can use that to market apprenticeship as a solution to both employers and employees and job seekers out there. So we'll continue to leave no stone unturned when it comes to federal dollars, and we're hopeful to be strategic about that as to how we help employers develop new employees and help job seekers find living wage career opportunities. But as of right now, it's that we're excited about the apprenticeship grant being so large, and then we're hopeful, fingers crossed, in our pursuit for that employment and training recovery grant.
Great. So I want to transfer back to Wisconsin really quick. If anyone jumped on, if you have additional questions, please use the question and answer feature. The chat feature is disabled, but we do have question and answers available. So coming back to Wisconsin, some companies, especially those in the critical industries, are experiencing rapid growth and are looking to hire and add to their teams. So what strategies would you recommend for those companies to connect with unemployed workers who are maybe new to the market?
So that one place that I mentioned a little bit earlier was that Job Center of Wisconsin, which is our free labor exchange. So employers can post jobs in there, and it's really meant to be pretty flexible and hopefully adaptable and effective in the sense that you can search for skills. Job seekers can search by industry, via geography, but again, unemployment insurance claimants, those that have applied for UI, are required to register on JCW. And earlier in the pandemic, and I believe it's still functional, it was as of Monday anyways, when we were still putting businesses into an essential or non-essential camp, that was a real challenge for those employers to find employees during that time. So we set up an in-demand jobs portal on JCW that is still up as of Monday, but that interchange is kind of meant to be the place where both employers can find job seekers and vice versa. So I would certainly encourage employers, if they haven't already, to register on JCW, put their jobs out there. And like I said, it's meant to be obviously user-friendly, but hopefully effective in drilling down to who you're looking for, the skills you're looking for. And that's one of our best tools available to employers out there anytime, but certainly during an economic crisis of this magnitude.
Absolutely. So just trying to be the convener between those two groups.
Yeah.
So on the flip side of that, we have people, and maybe this is going to be the same answer with the JCW site, but we have people who are new to the unemployment market. What can the Department of Workforce do to help people with training programs, whether that be people or employers, Someone might be new to unemployment and say, hey, this might be an opportunity for me to try a new career. I don't want to go back to school. What training opportunities might we have to help people be prepared for different work opportunities?
Sure, and I probably should have touched on this one too with the employer question, but we continue to move forward with Wisconsin's Fast Forward program. That is meant to be an employer-led training program where it's really flexible, but it's meant to deliver transferable credentials and skills, in-demand, recognized credentials that can follow those employees, but it's led by the employer. So if an employer is looking for some of those folks that may not have the right skill set, but you're looking to provide the training to get to that level, Fast Forward is an option for those employers. And then for employees, obviously the tech college system is a great place to start. But from DWD's perspective, we are and have been really bullish on apprenticeship in all of its forms, but registered apprenticeship in particular allows, I think there's the average age of an apprenticeship starting is mid-20s, so it's generally a career change for a lot of people. But that program allows for job seekers to earn, generally speaking, a living wage while learning an in-demand skill and earning that credential that follows them as they move along. But that's a really strong opportunity for folks looking to transition out of any industry that may be less in demand going forward. I know there are a lot of closures that were initially thought to be temporary that might turn out to be permanent. And so we're hopeful that apprenticeship is an option for a lot of folks, and we are continuing to work to expand that program geographically, to expand it within industries. And then, internally, we've got a really strong focus on trying to make that more, I don't know if it's attractive, but just do a better job of attracting a more diverse pool of apprentices to to those programs. It's generally speaking, not been well represented with women or persons of color. So we're really trying to expand all things apprenticeship for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which is that it's an opportunity to earn a living wage on your way to that credential within a couple of years. And so instead of perhaps accumulating student debt or leaving the workforce, you're able to remain in the workforce and still earn that credential.
Yeah, that's got to be the rub for most people, right? I mean, they want to try to gain a new skill, but at the same time, struggle with setting their life aside and dedicating themselves to it. So it sounds like that's a good solution. It's almost like we rehearsed this, because one of the questions that I wanted to ask next was about apprenticeship, but specifically youth apprenticeship. And it's interesting to me because here at the Chamber, we have a pretty robust and thriving youth apprenticeship program, about 150 kids connected with almost 140 different businesses. That program was really a well-oiled machine pre-COVID, but we're already starting to see some changes there, both in the demand, which is actually up from youth who are saying, hey, I've got a more flexible schedule, my school might be virtual. And then on the employer side, it varies, some questions about bringing on a 16, 17, 18-year-old in an apprenticeship role with what's going on with COVID. So I guess any reaction to the youth apprenticeship program and any potential changes that you might see as a result of COVID?
Sure. I don't think, we're anticipating any large-scale systemic changes to YA in this school year, but obviously there's going to be requiring a lot of flexibility from educators if they are instructing remotely, and of course employers if students are going to be working remotely. But we are planning on moving forward with a large number of apprentices this year. I think we just announced the release of about $5 million in youth apprenticeship grants to 37 consortia, which include about 400 school districts across Wisconsin. So your comments are spot on. I think that's up from 5,500 students last year. We're looking at about 6,000 this year. So it's interesting. I'd not heard I think that's a great selling point, that students might have a more flexible schedule, might be more able to participate in YA, but for the same reasons that we're so bullish on registered apprenticeship, that youth piece provides a really unique opportunity for students to test out an industry and an employer, and for that employer to test out what might be a lifelong employee. So there's obviously safety protocols in play, and I think it's going to be require some creativity and some flexibility across the state from both educators and employers. But we're moving full speed ahead on YA, and certainly going to look to groups like the Green Bay Chamber, who has been an excellent, executor of youth apprenticeship and does a great job with your program there. So we'll certainly be looking for best practices across Wisconsin from chambers, from sponsors, from educators, and from employers.
Yeah. Being relatively new to the chamber, I have my intro to youth apprenticeship call coming up probably with some of your staff in a couple of weeks, and I think it's like a 6-hour training, so it's going to be pretty robust, so I'm looking forward to that. Just want to remind participants again that we've got the question and answer feature up, and if you have any specific questions to your situation, please enter them in there. We do have a question from Sean at the Main Street Alliance, and he's curious about what policies you might be interested, either from state legislature or from Congress, to help businesses make it through the COVID-19 crisis. Any kind of policies or legislation that you think could be helpful?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. It's kind of maybe a bigger picture answer, but as you look at just how do we help communities and economies stay healthy and strong? A piece of that is making sure that those that are laid off are able to not only pay for their basic needs, but also invest in their communities and buy groceries and do the type of consumer spending that drives economic growth. So whether it's state or federal, we want to make sure that we are able to pay eligible claimants as quickly as possible. So it's a pretty strong probability that we'll be asking for unemployment insurance modernization dollars for our antiquated system that's 50 years old and doesn't allow us to do more than one program at a time. But that's maybe a roundabout answer, but that does help get claimants their dollars quicker. And then also just looking at the amount of money that those folks get on a per week basis. Just looking at Wisconsin pre-COVID, at a maximum of $370 a week, it's pretty hard to imagine if we were at a sustained level of 7, 8, 9, 10% unemployment in the state. If there wasn't federal assistance, that's a really meager amount of money for folks to be making it on. It sounds like, and this is out of our purview, but PPP was pretty well utilized in Wisconsin. I don't know if there's appetite for an extension of that. That's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. But for businesses, we want to make sure that their consumers and their customers have adequate economic capacity to support them. And part of that is through UI, but generally speaking, even pre-COVID, a lot of our priorities and things that we were pushing in this administration were the things that make strong commerce possible for everyone, like investments in roads, in our schools, in broadband. So kind of the, perhaps to some people, unexciting recommendations, but those things, those pieces of economic infrastructure upon which entrepreneurs can be successful, small business, big business, job seekers, employed folks, things that we all need to be economically secure. But as far as legislation, those are kind of the pieces we at DBD have thought about, which help claimants, but they also are able to help businesses that rely on everyone to purchase their goods and services, whether they're employed or not.
Sure. Caleb, this is a little bit off the script, but I'm curious about, I mentioned sort of the diversification and the feedback that we're hearing here in Northeast Wisconsin in terms of some businesses that are thriving, some, that are struggling a little bit more for a variety of different reasons, whether it be manufacturing or the service industry. Are you seeing any trends or themes like that around the state? I mean, is that pretty consistent in terms of how people are responding to all of this and finding a new reality?
Yes, I wish I had the numbers in front of me. Our UI team worked with our labor market information folks for a presentation to the Governor's Council on Workforce Investment. I'm still waiting on those slides, but it was really telling to kind of see, who was most affected by COVID as far as layoffs, and who continues to be most affected, whether it was a large business or small business. But obviously, Wisconsin being so heavily centered in manufacturing, there was a very large number and a pretty high percentage of that industry that was at least at one point affected by COVID-19 through layoffs, but perhaps not surprisingly, those service-related industries really took a big hit, whether that's travel and leisure, restaurants, bars, taverns. That is pretty uniform across the state that took a really big hit. as a result of COVID and its economic fallout. But if I can get those slides, I've been asking for them all day today. If I can follow up with this group, I'll certainly send those around. But they were really telling, within, again, kind of the big business category and the small business category, but the top two, I think in both were manufacturing, and then the service side was really hard hit.
Sure. I apologize, didn't mean to throw something at you, and I didn't expect you to have specific numbers, but if you do have something that you get to us, we are recording this session, and we certainly can promote that and attach that here. So as we're kind of wrapping up, and again, don't see any other questions in the question and answer, but want to make sure that we're responsive to the audience. But as it's really hard to be strategic and long-term when we're getting new information day by day. But as you sit in the seat that you do with your experience and the people that you talk to, what do you think that relief, reopening, and recovery looks like for Wisconsin? What's the path as you see it now, as murky or unsure as it might be? What do you see right now is how we get back to a sense of normalcy?
Yeah, that's a great question, and maybe the trillion-dollar question. But I think, as we've talked to different groups around the state and have listened to groups around the state, that the biggest thing that we can do for relief, recovery, and reopening is to stop the spread of COVID-19. So wearing masks, distancing socially, washing hands, getting that getting that contained is kind of the first and foremost priority for economic recovery. Until we do that, it's going to be really difficult for businesses to operate normally and generate revenue and have employees earn income and spend that at other businesses. So until that happens, it's going to be rough waters. And so we're hopeful that with the statewide mask mandate, with folks being just responsible and following those guidelines with distancing, with hand washing, with mask wearing, we can hopefully get this COVID trend going the right direction. So people feel safe going out to dinner, people feel safe going into work, and we're not having continued spread and continued economic consequences from a global pandemic that's been just ravaging our economy. And so we're hopeful that that's kind of first and foremost on what needs to be prioritized to get back to a whatever normal is going to be going forward. But it also looks at things like what are, of course, I think of DWD, but there are other training programs out there. But I think about how do we potentially help those folks either transition into apprenticeship or reskill. I think there are going to be some businesses and some industries that are not able to reopen. And so how can we help those affected employees transition into something that provides a living wage, and how do we best provide those skills to the folks that need them now and need to be placed in a position to be able to, like I said, not only cover basic needs, but hopefully use this inflection point in our economy to be able to cover basic needs and save adequately for retirement and pay for healthcare and invest in their communities. And so we're hopeful that we're able to leverage this to hopefully get people back to work, but obviously get them back into work, into opportunities that provide them the opportunity to live that American dream of having an assurance that you'll have a safe, happy, healthy retirement at a reasonable age, and not just be working yourself to the bone until you end up in the grave. So we're optimistic, and you're right. I mean, that big picture strategy is important. It's challenging when you're putting out fires left and right, but we've tried to keep that front of mind as we've dealt with this crisis as to what does our what does the relationship between work and quality of life look like on the other side of COVID? And I don't think we have all the answers, but we certainly keep asking ourselves that question and try to find good answers.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you putting time and effort into that, and again, trying to be strategic and to lead in a time when it's very difficult to do so. And I also appreciated your comments about not just helping people to get to a spot where they can survive, but thrive, right? I mean, we're trying to make sure that they have that kind of a lifestyle, and the connection there from workforce development is important. I'm getting down to the end of my list of questions. Nothing else in the chat box right now. Is there anything specifically that you wanted to touch on that I haven't asked about so far?
Sure. I think the only other thing I would cover, and I'm not sure, which groups the folks on this call belong to. If there are employers on this call, or I guess even the chamber, one of the success stories that we've had throughout COVID-19 at DWD has been the newfound popularity and wide utilization of the WorkShare program. So for those on the call not familiar, WorkShare is a program that allows employers to reduce hours of employees, and of course then those employees get pro rata wages, but they also remain attached to their benefits, and they are eligible for partial unemployment insurance. And so it's meant to help prevent mass layoffs, and it keeps those employees attached to their health care, and it allows for them to continue hopefully interacting with our economy at a level that keeps not only that family afloat, but our economy afloat. And we've seen just massive growth. I think in March, prior to COVID, we had one business using a WorkShare plan at about 20 employees. We peaked in July at about 700, just shy of 700 businesses, and about 23,000 employees on WorkShare. So if there are any employers on this call contemplating layoffs, or for the chamber folks, if you're working with businesses or other groups on this phone that are in a challenging spot or might be going forward, I would highly encourage them to consider using the WorkShare program. We've had really good feedback on turnaround of applications. And so if there's an opportunity there to prevent dislocations, you're able to give it to as few as 2 employees. You can reduce between 10% and 60% of their hours. And again, those folks stay attached to their health care and are able to get partial unemployment insurance. So I know there's been some Northeast Wisconsin businesses that have taken advantage of WorkShare and have found it very, very useful. So to the extent that that can be used to avoid full or permanent layoffs, please reach out, and I would encourage you to at least explore and hopefully utilize WorkShare.
It sounds, Caleb, like that is a really proactive measure, and rather than having people laid off and then filing for unemployment, that we're proactively trying to prevent that flow and keeping people whole while stay connecting to their companies.
It is. I think why we've been maybe so surprised is the wrong word, but just really pleased and grateful that so many employers, up to 700 at one time or close to it, were utilizing that program and taking that proactive step, on behalf of their company, but on behalf of their employees as well, and their communities. I think it's really kind of a win-win. We've been trying to trumpet and evangelize, the benefits of WorkShare throughout this, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, that's great. Had a question come in from Craig from Forward Service Corporation, and you touched on this a little bit, but what has the Department of Workforce Development been doing to assist with those drive-through job fairs? What does that look like? Sure.
Well, I know we certainly, publicize them, and to the extent that we can be helped in other ways, we are certainly excited about that and glad to hear that the first one or the first couple have gone fairly well. And I think any way that we can be, creative to deliver those services in a safe manner, we want to see more of those. And so I think I've, just seen shared on LinkedIn and other places that there are others planned. But if there are ways for DWD to be more helpful in those, we're certainly open to that. But encourage those creative, safe opportunities for job seekers and employers to connect.
Sure. A question just came in about the WorkShare program. Where can we send people to get more information about that?
Sure, I will. I can send the link around afterwards, but I believe it is dwd.wisconsin.gov/UI-tax/WorkShare. But I can confirm that and follow up. But DWD's website, here we go, WorkShare program. Yep, I got that right. dwd.wisconsin.gov/UI-tax/WorkShare. The application is right there on that page. You can send it in via snail mail, via fax, or via email. And like I said, you can do as few as 2 employees, and the hour reduction can be between 10% up to 60% reduction. But we have dedicated staff working on WorkShare, and even though it peaked in July at those high numbers, I think we're still pretty well sustained in that mid 500 range with around 18,000 employees. It's still being really well utilized, and just as businesses experience challenges going forward, we would encourage you to consider that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know here at the Chamber, we'll continue to promote that as well. I'm not sure what we've done to this point, but it sounds like something that businesses could take advantage of if they're in a tough spot. Well, Caleb, anything else? I've gone through my questions. We've certainly covered a lot of bases and have appreciated all of the information today. It's been great to just touch base and have this little bit of a personal touch. Certainly a lot of information out there and a lot of anxiety, both from the business side and from the employee side. So I appreciate you taking the time today to just have this kind of a format and question and answer, and feels personal in a time when it's tough to get that interaction.
I'm happy to be here today, and I see a lot of familiar names on the list of attendees. So just also want to say thanks. I know this is a team effort around workforce development and even around, to some extent, unemployment, but a lot of familiar names doing a lot of great work in Northeast Wisconsin. So Forward Service Corporate Workforce Development Board, other partners, DWD staff, thanks to everyone out there that's digging in. This has been, I think, I can only speak for me, but among the most challenging 5 months that I've been around, and I know that this is the same for a lot of folks. So thank you to everyone out there that's doing this work. It's wildly important and noticed and appreciated by a lot of people. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and hopefully this all settles down and we can get you back up to Green Bay here sooner rather than later.
That would be nice. I'd be glad to be back up in town.
All right. Well, Secretary Frostman, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it, and continue to do great work down there in Madison.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.